My name is Margot Delaney. I'm 53 years old, a retired financial strategist, and I live just outside Savannah, Georgia, where the magnolias bloom too early and folks still judge you by your husband's last name. Or at least they used to. I built a fortune most people can't even imagine. Quietly, carefully, on my own. And I let a man take credit for it, year after year, because I thought love meant letting someone else shine. I thought marriage meant sacrifice. But when the man I gave my life to tried to throw me away like last season's handbag, I didn't cry, I didn't beg, I didn't even flinch. I just moved every last penny out from under him and smiled when the floor gave way. If you've ever been written off by someone who thought you were done, and you know what it's like to build in silence while someone else takes the spotlight, go ahead and tap that like button, subscribe, and share, because this story is only just getting started. It was early December when I realized Tom, my husband of 27 years, had been planning our divorce behind my back. The holidays were coming up, and I was sitting on the porch with a hot mug of chamomile and a wool blanket over my knees. Georgia winters don't bite the way they do up north, but the cold that morning felt personal, like a warning. Tom had been coming home later and later. Slick excuses, shiny gifts to distract me, new cologne I didn't buy him. And the way he smiled, forced and thin, like a mask with a crack running straight through it. But the real punch came when I checked our shared investment dashboard. He didn't think I still looked, but I did. Every Friday, like clockwork. And that morning, there was a transfer request, $7.2 million, scheduled to route through a boutique firm in the Cayman Islands. Not ours, not one I ever authorized. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my hands wrapped around that mug like it was the only thing tethering me to the earth. And you know what I felt? Shame. Not rage, not betrayal, just a deep, bone-heavy shame that I had let myself believe we were still us. I whispered, "You stupid, tired woman. You knew better." Because this wasn't new. Tom had been cheating for years, not just with women, but with credit lines, fake consulting contracts, shady startups he swore would change the world. I had seen the signs, but I was too proud to admit that the man I married had slowly rotted into someone unrecognizable. I closed my laptop, called Noah, my godson, more like a son, really, who handles private wealth security for a firm in Atlanta. "Marks, I need everything pulled, liquidated, and relocked under my name only." "Does he know yet?" "No," I said, my voice flat. "But he will." And that's when the switch flipped. I stopped playing the grieving wife and started moving like the woman I used to be, the woman who had managed 9-figure portfolios before Tom even learned to tie his Windsor knot. Over the next 4 weeks, I quietly transferred everything: stocks, equity stakes, silent partner shares, even our vacation properties in Vail and Martha's Vineyard, into a trust structure I'd drawn up back in 2009 when I first suspected he might do something reckless one day. The best part? He had signed off on most of it. All those documents I'd handed him over the years asking for a signature while he watched ESPN or scrolled through Zillow listings, he never asked questions, never read the fine print. Just assumed it was Margot being type A again. I was always the detail person. He was the handshake and smile. Turns out, details win wars. The night he finally asked for the divorce, it was New Year's Eve. I'll never forget it. He waited until I'd finished setting out shrimp cocktail and lighting the stupid vanilla candles he always liked. "Margot, can we talk?" I turned around, still holding the lighter, and looked at him like I'd never seen him before.
The navy blazer, the Rolex I bought him for our 10th anniversary, his salt and pepper hair slicked back like he was auditioning for a finance magazine cover. "Go ahead," I said. "He's been thinking about this a long time, and I think it's time we go our separate ways. I'll make sure you're taken care of." That line, that smug, insufferable line, "I'll make sure you're taken care of." Like I was some dependent widow he'd found on the side of the road. I didn't say a word, just smiled. I think that rattled him more than anything. He slid the divorce packet across the table, like it was a gift he'd wrapped himself. I signed without hesitation. "You're not going to read it?" he asked. "I don't need to." "Well," he said, puffing up like he'd won something, "this'll be painless. We'll split everything evenly. I know the firms and accounts can be confusing, so I've already spoken to a finance lawyer on your behalf." "Tom?" I cut in. "Yeah?" "I hope she was worth it." He froze. His eyes narrowed just a little. "What are you talking about? The woman you emptied half our accounts for? I hope she enjoys yachts, though I imagine she'll be disappointed when she finds out it's in my name." I walked away before he could speak. 3 days later, I got the call from Noah. He tried to move $12 million. Every account bounced back. He's freaking out. "Good," I said. "Marks, he's calling you right now." I looked down at my phone. Sure enough, incoming call, Tom Delaney. I didn't answer. This story isn't about money. Not really. It's about finally waking up to your own damn value. I gave that man my youth, my brilliance, my backbone, and he thought he could walk away with half of what I built like I was some shadow in the corner? Well, I'm done being the shadow. And the next part of this story, that's when I make sure everyone sees what he really is. Because the world Tom lugs so much, the golf club buddies, the boardroom cliques, the press dinners, they're about to know exactly how much of his success was built on my silence. Tom didn't go quiet. I'd halfway hoped he would, that maybe, after realizing the accounts were empty and the rug had been yanked out from under him, he'd take his bruised ego and slip away into some other woman's shadow. But no. He did what men like him always do when the money dries up. He turned to pity, then posturing, and finally, PR. 2 weeks after he discovered he was broke, I got a call from Janine, an old friend of ours who still works in corporate media. "Hey, Margs, I didn't want to call, but I thought you should know. Tom's telling people you had a breakdown, that you emptied the accounts because you're mentally unstable." I just stood there, barefoot in my kitchen, staring out at the Spanish moss dripping from the oak trees like a southern ghost story. I could barely even register what she was saying. He's saying what? That you're erratic, paranoid, that he tried to get you help but you refused treatment. Said something about early dementia symptoms? You're kidding. I wish I was. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked laps around my living room, that wide-open empty space he'd insisted we renovate for guests we never had. My feet hit the hardwood like war drums. My heart felt like it had swallowed a fist. I knew Tom was cruel, but this was a new low. And the worst part? It was working. By the following Friday, I'd been left off the invitation list for the Savannah Coastal Investment Gala, an event I'd sponsored for 6 straight years. "There must have been a mix-up," the event chair said when I called. "Really?" I asked, even after I wired the $50K sponsor check last month. "Tom said the family's going through some things. We just wanted to give you both space." Family, space. Right. What they meant was, your husband made you sound unstable, and we believed him, because men like Tom don't lie, and women like you must have snapped. I hung up. Again.
And that's when I decided I wasn't just going to take back my money, I was going to take back my name. Let me tell you something about Old South money. It doesn't care if you're the one who built the empire. It only cares who smiles in the group photo and donates the most at the auction. And for years, Tom was the one standing next to me in every picture, sipping bourbon with those manicured donors while I handled the silent equity side of every damn deal. They didn't know that the house we lived in was bought with a single investment I made in 2008 during the financial crash. They didn't know that I was the one who sold early on the energy stock everyone else mocked until it quadrupled in value. They didn't know because I never needed them to. But now they were hearing that I was the fragile one, that poor Tom was cleaning up my mess. So I called Noah, my godson, again. Still got that asset trail we pulled together? You know I do. Good. I want it written up in a statement, neatly. Every investment, every proof of ownership. Make it bulletproof. What are you planning? I'm going to burn the mask he wears in public, and I'm going to do it with a smile. A week later, I showed up, uninvited, to the Savannah Coastal Gala in a navy silk dress and diamond earrings Tom once told me were too much for someone your age. The valet recognized me. Of course he did. But he looked nervous. Ma'am, I think there was a note that I wouldn't be attending. I smiled. It must have been a mistake. And I walked in like I owned the place, because frankly, I did. The flowers were arranged by my florist, the string quartet was booked by my assistant, the wine from the same Napa vineyard I'd invested in 8 years ago when the owner was about to sell to overseas buyers. Tom saw me before I saw him. He froze. Mid-sentence, mid-drink, mid-lie, probably. Then he smiled. That charming politician's smile that once melted my spine. "Margot," he said loudly as people started to turn towards us. "How are you?" "Oh, I'm lovely, clear-headed, well-rested, and solvent. You?" He laughed, but it was tight. His eyes darted to the faces watching us. He thought I'd keep up appearances. He forgot that I was done playing house. "You've been talking about me, Tom." "What are you talking about?" he said, still smiling. I pulled a leather envelope from my clutch and handed it to him. He opened it. Inside was the statement. Every investment, every dollar, every legal document tied to my name. And attached, a notarized letter from 2 of the firms we'd both invested in, stating clearly that Tom Delaney held no financial stake and never had. He looked at the papers, then at me. "You think this changes anything?" "It already has." I turned to the cluster of board members beside us, half of whom had been avoiding my eye all night. "In case anyone here had doubts, I'm not broke, I'm not broken, and I'm certainly not losing my mind." "Margot," Tom said, his voice low, "I suggest you stop using mine as an excuse for why you're broke, Tom. It's embarrassing." I left him there, jaw clenched, papers trembling in his hands. And for the first time in months, I felt clean. But peace doesn't last long when a man like Tom is humiliated. 2 nights later, I woke up to a knock at my front door. It was 11:47 p.m. I didn't even have to guess. I knew it was him. I wrapped a robe around me and opened the door just wide enough to see his face, red, desperate, and 2 drinks past dignity. "We need to talk." "No. You need to leave. You made me look like a damn fool in front of everyone. You think they care who signed what? They remember what they see, and they saw you throw me under the bus." "You threw yourself under the bus, Tom. I just stopped pretending you hadn't."
You ruined me." I stared at him, my hand still on the door, my pulse suddenly racing. "You did that to yourself. I just let the light in." He stepped forward just a little. Too close. He hissed, "You think this is over? It's not. You want to play dirty, Margot? Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you." And then he left. I stood there for a long time, listening to the echo of his tires crunching the gravel. And in that silence, I realized something. This wasn't just about money, or even reputation. Tom didn't just want to take what I had. He wanted to erase me. And I wasn't going to let him. Not now. Not ever.
After that night on my porch, when Tom showed up wild-eyed and full of venom, I started locking my doors again. Not out of fear, not exactly, but out of instinct. There's something unsettling about watching a man lose the illusion of power. It makes them unpredictable, desperate, sometimes dangerous. I wasn't scared of Tom. Not really. But I knew what he was capable of when he couldn't control the narrative. And sure enough, he launched his final campaign. First, he filed an emergency motion in court, claiming I'd transferred marital assets under false pretenses, that I was withholding community property in violation of our divorce agreement. He brought receipts, doctored bank statements, falsified emails, even a witness affidavit from one of his drinking buddies claiming I'd threatened to destroy Tom financially out of spite. He even tried to freeze one of my trust accounts. It was all bluff, smoke and mirrors. But it got ugly. My lawyer, Rena Marcus, a pit bull in pearls, called me the moment the paperwork hit her desk. "We're going to bury him," she said. "But he's going to fight like hell first." I said, "Let him try." I showed up to court 2 weeks later in a slate gray suit, hair pinned up, no jewelry except the simple silver ring my mother left me. Tom came in behind me, tan fading, jaw tight, wearing the same navy blazer he always wore to things that scared him. The judge, a woman in her 60s with readers sliding down her nose, was no fool. After Rena laid out our side, asset trail, timestamps, trust filings going back years, the judge asked Tom a single question. "Mr. Delaney, can you provide documented proof that you personally funded any of the accounts you claim were jointly owned?" Tom stammered, blamed paperwork mismanagement, said he wasn't aware Margot was handling things solo, that our finances were complicated. The judge narrowed her eyes. "What's complicated is trying to claim ownership of something your name never once appeared on." Case dismissed. The next day, Tom's accounts were officially flagged for fraudulent claim filings, and the court issued a protective order. He couldn't approach me, my property, or contact any of my financial institutions again. That's when it really hit him. He hadn't just lost the money, he'd lost the ability to ever touch me again. But here's the part I didn't expect. The moment it was over, the moment the ink dried and the judge's gavel dropped, I didn't feel triumphant. Not at first. I felt exhausted, hollow almost, like I had been holding up this shield for so long that when I finally lowered it, I didn't recognize the world around me. I went home, peeled off my suit, and sat in the middle of my living room floor in sweatpants, drinking chamomile out of a chipped mug and staring at the fireplace. It was the first time in years that my mind was quiet. Not planning, not protecting,
not pretending, just quiet. And in that silence, something powerful crept in. Peace. In the weeks that followed, the town slowly turned its head. The same people who whispered about me at galas started texting apologies. Invitations reappeared. Janine from media asked if I'd do a profile piece, The Woman Behind the Empire. I declined. Let Tom chase attention. I wasn't interested in being anyone's redemption arc. I did do one thing, though. There was a nonprofit for women over 50 trying to re-enter the workforce, many of them divorced, some of them survivors of financial abuse. I wrote them a check big enough to open 2 new offices and fund their legal aid for 3 years. When the director asked why, I said, because I know what it feels like to be written off by someone who never saw your worth. Tom? He faded fast. Turns out, when the money disappears and the lies dry up, so do the friends. Last I heard, he was renting a condo in Jacksonville, giving consulting advice to realtors who barely returned his calls. Savannah doesn't say his name anymore, not in the circles that matter. I didn't erase him. He did that all by himself. As for me, I'm good. I kept the house, but I don't stay in it much. These days, I split my time between Savannah and Boulder, Colorado, where my niece just had twins and the air smells like pine and freedom. I started painting again. Badly, but joyfully. I let my hair go silver. I laugh more and louder. I walk barefoot on the back porch without worrying who's watching. And I've stopped apologizing for taking up space. It took me over 50 years to realize that sometimes the people who tell you you're too much are just afraid of what happens when you finally stop shrinking. Here's what I learned. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's just building a life so solid, so unapologetically yours, that the person who tried to break you is left choking on the dust of your absence. That's the kind of justice that sticks, that echoes. Thanks for sticking with me through the story. If you've been underestimated, overlooked, or lied to, I see you. Don't let them decide your ending. Write your own. Sometimes the best revenge is walking away with your head high and your legacy intact. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after someone tried to tear you down, I'd love to hear your story. Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your own tale of justice in the comments below. Because healing isn't quiet, and you never know who needs to hear your voice.